Chapter 10:11. Unexpected visitors _2. So, just in case the other party unexpectedly turns hostile, Zeus would be able to minimize the risk. Of course, it would be best if everything went smoothly. I never would have imagined. I once courted Métis, the goddess of both wisdom and beauty, and she brought me the help of the ocean god system. Now, I am about to embark on the same path, and from now on, it's possible that the abyss could become my ally. Teske, I just don't know how beautiful this legendary mother of demons really is. The ultimate in appearance, supreme radiance. I don't ask for too much as an ancient god who likewise spawned abyssal demon lords through parthenogenesis. If she looks like Earth Mother Gaia in her youth, I would be satisfied. The Heavenly Father is the pioneer of sovereignty. I am the person who takes it to another height. Therefore, what he once had, naturally I should have my share too. He didn't show it on his face, but deep down he was indeed looking forward to it. However, after thinking it over for a moment, Zeus ultimately gave up the idea of inquiring about the other party and decided to keep the surprise for the future. On one hand, as the only Great One in Tartarus, information about Moya was bound to be sparse and distorted. It would be better not to get any information than to receive false news. On the other hand, it was to give himself a sense of anticipation. After all, no matter what, this beauty praised by countless demons as ultimate shouldn't lose to the many true gods of the present day, even if tinged with a touch of alien charm. Just wait another month. No, another half a month. By then, even if I don't come forward, they will inevitably find me when they search one by one. He shook his head slightly, and with that thought Zeus also felt somewhat helpless. Although Zeus no longer had any aversion towards this matter and only retained a measure of caution, passively being discovered was still not something to be happy about. But what could he do if the Abyss Lord's command happened to come on the same day as his? It was an unavoidable situation. So, bowing his head in contemplation, without dwelling on things that couldn't be changed for now, Zeus focused his energy on places he had been to recently within this level of the abyss. The city was sealed off. Any intruder would be marked by the illusory Lord Seal triggering the interface power. Combined with the temporal seal of this realm, it was akin to catching turtles in a jar. But if he were to just unleash part of his strength to leave this place first, and then hide the divine artifact and the origin before the demon prince's arrival, that should be more than adequate. Let's go with that. Advance or retreat? I'm prepared. After revisiting the plan in his mind, Zeus didn't find any problems. Next, all he needed to do was wait. Within the abyss, the expectant divine king incarnate fell silent for now. The living creatures of the real world knew too little about abyss demons. Based on what was currently known, Zeus could not be sure if the Lord of the Thunderpool was a rational abyssal demon lord who reigned in his impulses, unlike his kin, or a fickle madman prone to swift changes in mood. These things could only be verified with one's own eyes and the proof of time. He didn't have that much time, so he had to leave some contingency plans for himself. Elsewhere, almost concurrently with the descent of the Black Steel, the five-colored Dragon Queen also returned to the myriad abyss planes. She felt for the black crystal hidden under her dragon scale, discerned her direction, and then headed towards the inter-realm that connected the mortal territories and the abyss. He didn't rush to devour the heart core of the abyssal demon lord Balrog Flame Demon, because the legend of the Azura Field is no longer a secret in Tartarus. Its birth was related to the fall of a primordial abyss demon, and here in Tartarus, absorbing the power of enemies, especially demons and devils consuming each other's strength, could be blessed with interface power. Although Dragon Mother yearned for the power of the abyss demon, she also hoped to exclude the chaotic part of the abyss as much as possible. So the Azura Field was the most suitable place for her to devour the heart core. Moreover, if luck was on her side, perhaps a real big shot would lend her a hand, directly wiping the chaotic flame currents from the heart core. For a time, the two real-worlders who entered the abyss seemed to have made a pact. Regardless of whether they gave up on their original goals or not, both were about to achieve the objectives they set out for at the beginning of their journey. Not considering the flow of time within the abyss on Mount Olympus in the real world, the sun and moon had only completed their cycles 6 times. On this day, the Golden Sun chariot descended from the west. After parking the divine artifact, Apollo returned to his temple as usual. However, perhaps by coincidence, in the middle of Mount Olympus, Apollo ran into Aphrodite, who could hardly hide her joy yet hurried along. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes, knowing that the astral changes had just occurred not long ago, and in the zodiacal star domain, the divine armor associated with the goddess of beauty, Pisces, had been cracked with several fissures during the turmoil. Aphrodite had originally planned to go to the stars to reason with the victory goddess endowed with sentience, but before she could set off, the conflict between Ether, the god of heavenly light, and the goddess of the nether moon reached the ears of the gods. She immediately cancelled her trip. Facing Nike, whose true form was a divine artifact, Aphrodite dared to question her a few times, relying on her strong divine power, but facing the more powerful and prestigious goddess of the nether moon, she dared not speak out at all. Carrying a belly full of grievances back to Mount Olympus, Aphrodite had no choice but to once again vent her anger on Ares. At that time, Apollo was still surveying the mortal realm from the sun chariot, and using the right of the high-altitude patrol left on the little sun by the ancient sun god, he just happened to witness this scene. In a corner of the divine mountain range, Aphrodite rebuked the war god without any courtesy. If only he had half the ability of Athena, he would not have ended up in his current plight. Such conversations had happened before, and the goddess of beauty's dissatisfaction with Ares had been long-standing. However, what surprised Apollo was that, perhaps because the war god had been hit too frequently lately, this time Ares only explained a few words, then left in a huff, leaving Aphrodite, who had no outlet for her anger, behind. The goddess of beauty was furious, and although she maintained an indifferent facade in front of others, she had not laughed in private for a long time. It's unknown what good fortune had come her way, for her demeanor to be so joyous. Not having a gossiping nature, Ares simply greeted from afar and did not intend to pry any further. "Aphrodite, your highness, long time no see." "Who is that?" "Ah, Lord Apollo, long time no see. I really didn't expect to bump into you here." Startled by the sudden voice, Aphrodite looked at its source. Apollo nodded slightly as a return courtesy. After briefly exchanging pleasantries, the two deities went their separate ways. The night fell, and it was time for Apollo to return to his temple. But as he passed by Aphrodite, without stopping and turning his back to the goddess of beauty, the sun god couldn't help but rise a hint of doubt in his eyes. It was quite strange. He always knew that the scents of various flowers always lingered around Aphrodite, just like the everlasting flower sea in front of the goddess of beauty's temple, always verdant and blooming. But this time, although it was just a brief encounter, Apollo faintly smelled a scent that was distinctly different from the floral fragrance. If it were another deity, they might not care about such a trifle or even fail to notice any difference. But Apollo was born in the mortal realm, and he had once relied on his martial skills and experience to track the giant python. So he had always paid close attention to such subtleties. Although it was just a change in scent, it still raised doubts in his heart. The smell that typically lingered around volcanoes wasn't very pleasant, and it was a wonder how Aphrodite had come across it. Sulfur. I believe that's the name. Chapter 10:12, Moya and the Past of the Goddess of Beauty. Hiss. Clang. Without fire igniting itself, the vast underground space lights up, one by one, the suspended lanterns brightening with the arrival of Aphrodite. Without a moment's pause, the goddess of beauty continues forward. The grand doors behind her close automatically, severing the connection between the palace and the outside world. She passes through the narrow corridor where doors exist at intervals on both sides. Occasional rustling sounds emerge, resembling whispers or wails. Yet the goddess of beauty pays no heed, simply continuing forward. After an unknown amount of time, the space ahead suddenly widens. A wave of heat and blinding red light hits her, prompting Aphrodite to slightly exert her divine power for protection. In the next moment, at the end of her vision, an ancient altar made of giant stones appears, and nearby, a bubbling magma lake. The intense power radiates from it, and fragments of rules vastly different from the material world linger above it. Undeterred, Aphrodite walks toward the location of the magma lake. Sensing her presence, the surface of the lake begins to stir slightly. Amid the bubbling froth, two creatures with beastly hooves, bat wings, goat horns, and long tails emerge, their alluring yet delicate faces filled with fear and obedience. "We welcome your highness." Their voices are uniform and clear, subtly imbued with a hint of charm. Looking at the scene before her, a slight smile forms on Aphrodite's lips. After countless failures, she had finally achieved a result that barely satisfied her. Though still not perfect, this was the best she could do with her current abilities. "There's nothing here for you now, you may leave." Speaking lightly, Aphrodite gestures to the two nymphs who had recently emerged from the sea of flowers in front of her palace. They weren't needed here for now, as with their abilities, they couldn't comprehend her deeper secrets. "Yes, your highness." As the flames flicker, the two bow, and then the space in front of Aphrodite clears, devoid of any creatures besides the goddess of beauty. Swoosh! Her fingers trace the ancient altar, and with a light sigh, the goddess of beauty slowly approaches. At this moment, looking at this place she had visited countless times, a trace of reminiscence flashes in Aphrodite's eyes. When did she acquire this underground space? It must have been a long time ago, as she barely remembered the time. She only remembered that it all started after the chaos following Typhon's rebellion. The rampant king of all monsters had not truly overturned the rule of the divine king, but from that day on, the world that had witnessed this supreme demon's strength inadvertently gained many things, including Aphrodite herself. That day, the goddess of beauty frantically fled from the dark winds that covered the sky, transforming into a fish to evade the demon king's conquest. Ares only cared about his own escape, and the all-gods willing to confront the enemy were no match. Even the divine king who had defeated Mother Earth was extracted like a spineless dog, unable to resist the powerful demon king. That was the most terrifying day for Aphrodite, and her most powerless one. For her proud beauty was meaningless in front of the grand demon king, like an ignored piece of scrap paper. This fear lingered in the depths of her heart, and even though the divine king eventually turned defeat into victory by killing Typhon in the sea, she still hadn't recovered. Thus, one evening after that day, Aphrodite fastened her belt, put on her grandest makeup, and had a chance encounter with Zeus in a corner of Mount Olympus. In the entire realm of chaos and the divine, he alone had sufficient strength and a desire for beauty. This is what she told herself, although Zeus had never approached her on his own, which made her doubt her own beauty. Although the divine king was not truly invincible, he also used schemes to defeat his opponent. But regardless, he was ultimately the victor. And as the victor, he had the right to pluck the most beautiful flower. "I succeeded, yet I also failed. The fact proves that Zeus hasn't overlooked my beauty. In the presence of real beauty in this world, perhaps some can restrain their desires, but none are utterly without desire. But he, Zeus, even youths among mortals can't escape his grasp. Yet he forcibly suppressed his covetousness for my beauty. This was the most shameful insult to me. I will never forget that day. One day, I will make you regret your rejection." An ironic smile inadvertently climbs her face, her fingertips feeling the coolness of the altar. Aphrodite isn't entirely unable to accept being rejected by others. Although she resents those who are blind to her beauty, she also admires their firm will in her heart. But others aside, Zeus is different. He is not a man of restraint, never has been. Nor does he seem to have any firm will, at least in this regard. Yet faced with the rare initiative of the goddess of beauty, he still gave up on himself, as if avoiding a pile of garbage. After that day, Aphrodite doubted herself in her temple for a long time, even going mad and seeking her past confidence among various men in the mortal realm. Chapter 1013. Moya and the Goddess of Beauty's Past _2. They are kings, they are generals. They can also be commoners or even beggars. After an unknown amount of time had passed, one day she awoke alone on a tall mountain. Aphrodite looked at the sun in the sky, and the Goddess of Beauty, as if awakening from a dream, made up her mind. In this world, others are unreliable, only oneself can be depended on. She could use her beauty as a weapon, but it absolutely could not be her only weapon. She must make a change, and when the goddess of beauty reflected on the past, she was pleasantly surprised to find that a path unknown to many had actually lain in her palm for a very long time. Thank you to the god of sun, Helios. Although he is no longer here, the amusing tales he used to share to make the beauty laugh in bed are still remembered by Aphrodite. Aside from the secrets seen by him during his daily patrols of the sky, the goddess of beauty also heard from Helios an uncertain tale. A drastic change had taken place in Tartarus, where it was no longer a place of confusion for all gods. This clang, spontaneously combusting without fire, in the vast underground space, accompanying the arrival of Aphrodite, the hanging lanterns one by one lit up. Without a moment's pause, the goddess of beauty continued forward. The door behind her also automatically closed by itself, cutting off the underground palace's connection with the outside world. She threaded through the narrow corridor, and on both sides of Aphrodite at intervals there were doorways. Occasional rustling noises could be heard occasionally from them, like murmurs and also like howls. However, the goddess of beauty turned a deaf ear and just continued forward. After an unknown amount of time, the space in front of her suddenly opened up. Waves of heat and blinding red light assaulted her face, causing Aphrodite to summon a bit of divine power to protect herself. The next moment, an ancient altar made of giant stones appeared at the end of her line of sight, and near the altar, there was a bubbling magma lake. Intense power radiated from it, and even some fragments of rules vastly different from the material world lingered above it. Unstopping in her steps, Aphrodite walked towards the site of the magma lake, and as if sensing her arrival, the surface of the lake slightly rippled. Amid the bubbling froth, two creatures with beast hooves, bat wings, goat horns, and long tails emerged, their charming yet delicate faces filled with fear and submission. "We welcome your highness." The voices were neat and crisp, with a hint of allure concealed within them. And looking at the scene before her, a faint smile hung on the lips of Aphrodite. She did not know after how many failures she finally achieved a result that she was barely satisfied with. Although it still wasn't perfect with her current strength, this was all she could do. "This is not your concern now, you two may leave." Speaking indifferently, Aphrodite gestured to the two nymphs who were once born in the Sea of Flowers before her temple to leave. They were temporarily not needed here because their abilities were insufficient to understand her deeper secrets. "Yes, your highness." The firelight flickered, and upon hearing the command, the two bowed simultaneously before the space before Aphrodite cleared, leaving no creature besides the goddess of beauty. Swoosh! Her fingers traced the ancient altar, and with a light sigh, the goddess of beauty slowly approached. At this moment, looking at this place which she had visited countless times, a hint of reminiscence flashed in Aphrodite's eyes. When did she come to possess this underground space? It must have been quite some time ago, as she no longer remembers clearly. She only recalls the beginning, which probably stemmed from the aftermath of Typhon's rebellion. The brazen and wanton king of all monsters did not truly overturn the divine king's rule, but from that day on, the world that witnessed the supreme demons might inadvertently gained many things, and Aphrodite was one of them. On that day, the goddess of beauty frantically fled from the shadowy winds that blotted out the sky, transforming into a fish to evade the demon king's conquest. Ares only cared about saving his own life, and the gods who dared to fight were no match. Even the divine king who had defeated Mother Earth was spinelessly drawn out like a dead dog, powerless to resist the formidable demon king. That was the most fearful and powerless day for Aphrodite, because her pride in her beauty was meaningless in front of the towering demon king, as negligible as a piece of discarded paper. This fear lingered at the bottom of her heart, and even when the divine king later turned defeat into victory, slaughtering Typhon utterly over the ocean, she still hadn't recovered from the shock. Thus, one evening after that day, Aphrodite fastened her belt, applied her most extravagant makeup, and encountered Zeus by chance in a corner of Mount Olympus. In the entire realm of chaos and divine persons, only he possessed sufficient strength and a desire for beauty. She told herself this, although Zeus had never approached her on his own, which made her once doubt her own beauty. Even though the divine king wasn't entirely invincible, he had overcome his opponent by relying on schemes. Nevertheless, he was ultimately the victor. And as the victor, he was entitled to pick the most beautiful flower. I succeeded, yet I also failed. The truth is, Zeus did not fail to see my beauty. In the face of true beauty in this world, some may resist their desires, but none are devoid of desire. But he, Zeus, even though he cannot escape the charms of mere mortal youths, still forcefully restrained himself from coveting my beauty. This is the most shameful insult to me, and I will never forget that day. One day, I will make you regret your rejection. An ironic smile unwittingly climbed onto her face, her fingertips feeling the coldness of the altar. Upon introspection, Aphrodite couldn't accept being rejected by others. Although she resented their blindness, she admired their resolute will. Yet others aside, Zeus was different. He was never a restrained man, nor did he seem to have any firm will, at least in this regard. But faced with the seldom proactive goddess of beauty, he still abandoned himself, fleeing as if from a pile of rubbish. After that day, Aphrodite doubted herself within her own temple for a long time and even went to the mortal realm in a frenzy, seeking reaffirmation of her confidence from various men. They were kings, generals, they could be commoners or even beggars. Time passed until one day she woke up alone on a high mountain, and Aphrodite, gazing at the sun in the sky, had an epiphany akin to awakening from a dream. In this world, others are unreliable. Only oneself can be depended on. She could use her beauty as a weapon, but it must not be her only one. She must make a change, and when reminiscing about the past, the goddess of beauty surprisingly found that a path unknown to most had been lying in her palm for a long time. Thanks to the god of sun, Helios, although he was no longer present, the amusing stories shared to make the beauty laugh in their shared bed were still remembered by Aphrodite. Aside from the secret scene when he surveilled the sky daily, the goddess also heard a doubtful piece of news from Helios. Tartarus had undergone a drastic change. It was no longer the chaotic prison of the gods, but had birthed its own interface and creatures. The god of sun dared not investigate further, nor did Aphrodite dare before Typhon's rebellion. But now she had no choice but to dare. Since then, one hero after another from the mortal realm received the favor of the goddess of beauty due to various accidents and then vowed to bring back the secrets of the abyss for the deities. They ventured forth one after another, bringing back crucial information for the deities with their lives. Until the last brave soul was accidentally discovered by a great will wandering the abyss interface. She noticed the special divine power on that insignificant human, representing the beauty of divine authority in the material world. Chapter 1014, Shaping and Advent. Rustling. In the fragment of time-space, the goddess of beauty quietly awaited the response from the other side. The swirling vortex connected the abyss and the mortal realm, yet the separation between them still existed. Thus, at the bottom of Tartarus, within the chaotic time-space that had not fully evolved into a complete interface, darkness undulated like flowing water, and yet resembled a colorful ribbon. Aphrodite was not aware that on the other side of what seemed to be a calm time-space tunnel, an indescribable, massive entity was stirred by her words, causing a tumult like a roaring tsunami. "Ah! A vessel, huh?" The voice murmured, echoing from all directions. Hearing the voice, the expression became somewhat bewildered. Between sanity and madness, so many years had flown by. Yet at this moment, the thing she once sought to reclaim was right before her eyes. But despite Moya's attempts to remember, she could not recall her former appearance. Was her former self beautiful? Perhaps. Although she had forgotten much, at least this memory remained fresh for Moya. As a noble Titan's god, her appearance was undoubtedly beautiful. Yet, millions of years had passed, and after Mnemosyne lived for tens of thousands of years in the abyss, under the influence of Tartarus day and night, she was no longer sure what her once beauty was. So when the present goddess of beauty's initially thrilling words fell, Moya, for a moment, wasn't as excited as imagined. She looked at the spinning time-space tunnel and instead posed another somewhat unrelated question. A vessel that carries my will, that's good. But goddess of the mortal realm, successor of Olympus, as a deity presiding over beauty, you must have your own unique understanding of what beauty is, right? Of course. Her voice was very confident. Aphrodite believed no one understood beauty better than herself. Receiving her affirmative response, Moya then continued to ask. Good, since that is the case, then you must be able to answer my dilemma. The goddess of beauty in the mortal realm, please tell me, in this world, within your domain, what exactly is the standard for judging beauty, one that holds universally? As the goddess of beauty, you must be able to answer this question for me. Are you asking the standard of beauty? Somewhat hesitant, on the other side of the tunnel, Aphrodite was slightly taken aback. She had not expected to ever hear such a question. Beauty is beauty. Does it even have standards? Momentarily stumped, yet Aphrodite was ultimately the goddess of beauty. For thousands of years, even if she seldom explored the foundation of her domain, as long as she truly wanted to know, she could find the answer to the question. So just moments later, the goddess of beauty's voice once again reached into the abyss. Beauty has no unified standard, Your Honor, because beauty has never been an objective concept. From the perspective of humans, there is human beauty. From the viewpoint of deer, there is deer beauty. Even when strength reaches a certain level, they too can showcase the beauty of their domains, just like the blood tree rooted in the sun, which is the ultimate perfection of life. But in the end, there's no absolute beauty. If there must be, perhaps it's the world itself. The true function of the authority of beauty is not to shape an objective, absolute concept of beauty, but to allow me to change with the changes of all things. In the eyes of those who love tranquility, the goddess of beauty can be tranquil. In the eyes of those who prefer ardor, the goddess of beauty can be passionate. To a fish, the goddess can be a fish, while to an eagle she can soar in the sky. The authority of beauty allows me to become the most perfect figure in anyone's eyes. Yet there is no figure that is perfect in everyone's eyes in this world. And the divine body I display to the world is simply the form that best fits the majority's definition of beauty. Is that so? I understand. Seemingly enlightened, yet Moya felt she understood. She didn't heed the part about becoming the most perfect figure in others' eyes. Instead, after hearing Aphrodite's explanation, she developed another understanding. Beauty, in essence, is the recognition of others. Though transforming into the shape that others recognize is one method, changing others' attitudes to make everyone recognize oneself is also another method. However, the latter is probably difficult. The mother of demons' body swayed in the chaos, stirring boundless waves. Nonetheless, first, let this present deity create a vessel for herself. Since she had already forgotten her former appearance and barely remembered the aesthetic of the mortal realm, let her take the initiative and craft a perfect body for herself. Goddess of the mortal realm, your answer is quite good. However, apart from verbal response, I still need to see the vessel you described. Since beauty is subjective, then create for me a perfect body in the eyes of the strongest in this world. Although you are the goddess of beauty, some of your ideas are still too naive. What is the value of the vast majority's definition of beauty in this world, which ultimately belongs to the mighty? Aphrodite silently scoffed, showing some disdain towards Moya's views, yet she did not argue the point. Such cognition was normal for a being from the abyss, having lived in such harsh depths for so long. Chapter 10:15. Shaping and Advent _2. After all, that place was even harsher than the underworld. And what did it know of love and beauty? While she appears rebellious and in contact with the abyss now, Aphrodite has no real intention of defecting to Tartarus. This is merely a contingency plan and a means to enhance her strength. After all, the authority of beauty in her hands is still too non-lethal compared to the all-encompassing attack of the power of the abyssal demon lord. Deities of this realm have always looked down upon places beyond the mortal realm, the edge of the starry sky and the underworld are considered remote and desolate, not to mention the abyss hell. If the former Helios wasn't aware that Zeus would eventually settle accounts with him, he wouldn't have sought refuge in the embrace of the outer gods. Thus, despite the huge disparity in strength, this doesn't affect the pride within the goddess of beauty's heart. Perfection in the eyes of the mightiest, right? Of course, no problem. Although Aphrodite does not know who among those with great divine power is the strongest, and her influence barely reaches them, there is one person whose perception of beauty she quite understands. She once fully captivated him to the point where he looked at her with a fiery gaze, as if desiring to crush and devour her. This is all too clear to the goddess of beauty. That should do it. The most perfect, in the divine king's view, should be sufficient to handle it. As you wish, I will achieve that, she said. However, a vessel capable of carrying your will must involve the power of demon god, and you promised me a reward. You may come to the abyss to collect it, she hurriedly spoke, but seeing no response from Aphrodite, Moya had to find another solution. If you don't come, then prepare sufficient sacrifices. If you desire for the demon god level power to descend to the mortal realm, you better find a suitable location. The stricter the laws of the realm, the more sacrifices you will need. I give you 3 days, try not to keep me waiting. Initially, Moya had planned to imprison this goddess of beauty from the realm of mortals. Being the mother of demons, she was used to not keeping her word. But Aphrodite isn't so foolish. She has never stepped foot into the abyss. However, since there's no opportunity now, let it be and consider it again when the time is ripe. Right now, Moya just wants to quickly possess a normal body, capable of openly wandering the abyss. Just 2 days ago, a lord calling himself Demon Prince from the over 800th layer of the abyss suddenly sent her a letter, stating that a deity from this world who heard of her legend wanted to visit her, to pay respects to the glory of the great mother of demons, which left Moya both shocked and elated. The happiness needs no mention. Moya never expected that the fame she forged within the abyss would spread outside, attracting gods to visit her. A deity from the human realm. It has been a long time since she had face-to-face contact with one. As for her shock, it was because Moya didn't want to ruin the good impression of the one who came seeking fame. Yet she had no other means to meet this person face-to-face. Fortunately, this goddess of beauty from the human realm was quite capable, and Moya was definitely going to reward her greatly. Thinking this, Moya's tone softened considerably. Besides, you can also send an embodiment, to which I will grant the power of demon god and the authority to rule over a domain. Of course, I will not lessen the reward I promised you. But goddess of beauty of the mortal realm, are you sure the vessel you create can really carry my will without being seen through by other deities? Of course, but bear in mind, this new demon has just been born, so you must be careful using it. As long as their power does not exceed my limit, they won't be able to see through the true nature of your will. On this matter, the authority of a deity is not to be doubted, she firmly stated, stirring something in Aphrodite's heart. Leaving an embodiment in the abyss? Well, that's possible. Although the gods do not involve powers like time or spirituality, thus cannot guarantee the embodiment's alignment with the original at all times, the existence of this fragment of space and time ensures she doesn't need to worry about the communication problems between her true form and the embodiment. As for the sacrifice used to channel the power of demon god, she had already prepared it. Humans were out of the question. Even if she sacrificed an entire human nation, the drawn power of the abyss might still not be sufficient. Fortunately, with just a gentle flick of her fingers, a deity from a certain starry sky had scavenged plenty of corpses from the zodiacal star domain, and many of these were evil creatures that were sealed rather than killed. These sacrifices were now placed in the hidden starry space arranged by that deity, waiting for her to offer them to the abyss. The cost was trivial for Aphrodite. Using evil creatures to sacrifice to demons, this was also a fine remedy to eliminate those disgusting things. Thus, when Aphrodite finally returned to her temple, she immediately took flight, heading towards the starry sky. Goddess of the nether moon. As she watched the moon getting closer in the sky, Aphrodite couldn't help but think of the nether moon from the underworld. A flicker of annoyance crossed her eyes. Little was known that the god of heavenly light, who checked the unrest in the zodiacal star domain as soon as it began, did so actually because of the goddess of beauty. Otherwise, for Aether, who had often been harassed by the heroic spirits led by Perseus from Olympus, it would have been better to have more trouble in the zodiacal star domain. He would have applauded the turmoil and not rushed to check it first. Yet, he did not expect that instead of awaiting Aphrodite. He encountered Liana breaking through the sky, and the result is known to all gods. One day, I too will possess such power. And unlike you, as a weapon naturally belonging to the goddess of beauty, I know best how to wield it. Without another glance, her figure whisked past the moon traversing the starry sky. Although she had heard many tales about the insides of Abyss, Aphrodite had not yet seen what Tartarus truly looked like for herself. Abyss, 862-11. Thunder Pool. Beneath the dim sky, the heavy rain never ceased. The figure rapidly moving through the rain, the divine king's avatar looked somewhat hurried. Not long ago, he secretly incited demons to forcefully break the barrier enveloping the city, leaving the demon city at the cost of leaving behind a mark. Following the map in his memory, Zeus relentlessly searched for a suitable place to conceal what he had obtained on his journey. The hiding of Mjolnir went smoothly. He placed it under a long-dormant volcano. Although the fire element isn't abundant in Thunder Pool, there are still volcanoes here, albeit not frequently erupting. However, as soon as the first step was completed, while preparing to find a hiding place for the residual origin power of the alien realm thunder god Thor, Zeus encountered an unexpected situation he did not wish to see. A boundless oppressive force arrived from the horizon. The Abyss Lord controlling this realm was stronger than Zeus anticipated, and his reaction speed was much faster. Compared to most abyssal demon gods he had previously encountered with intermediate divine power, this self-proclaimed demon prince was simply not on the same level. Before finding the most suitable place, the powerful aura had already rapidly approached where Zeus was. Although the opponent did not instantly come to his location, but instead started capturing the demons that had escaped with Zeus. Looking at this situation, it seemed unlikely he could remain hidden under the opponent's watchful eyes. I really didn't expect this so-called demon prince actually has some skills. Gently shaking his head, compared to most abyssal demon gods he had previously encountered with intermediate divine power, this self-proclaimed demon prince was simply not on the same level. Before finding the most suitable place, the powerful aura had already rapidly approached where Zeus was. Although the opponent did not instantly come to his location, but instead started capturing the demons that had escaped with Zeus. Looking at this situation, Chapter 10:16, The Demon's Doctrine of Victory. In the distant sky, oppressive thunderclouds rolled in. The interface power, dominion over a realm, spontaneously gathered at his side, shielding its own sovereign. A human figure with eagle wings, hands like talons, surrounded by thunder fire, holding a long spear. Soaring swiftly through the skies of Thunder Pool 862-11. The demon prince casually struck down a demon tainted with the Lord's seal using thunder and lightning, and continued on towards the next target. His towering height stretched several zhong, and at the center of his brow, a single eye sparkled with silver light, ceaselessly scanning the earth, with nothing hidden from its sight. As one of the abyssal demon lords, the demon prince undoubtedly had an appearance unlike any deity of the mortal realm. However, in many respects, this lord similarly retained a somewhat humanesque visage. And for this appearance, many demon gods had mocked him for his fragility, yet unexpectedly, the mother of demons who dwelt at the bottom of the abyss seemed to truly appreciate it. Of course, in any case, once the demon prince demonstrated his overwhelming strength, no one dared to contest him anymore. Crack! Once again approaching a being infused with the Lord's aura, the demon prince casually unleashed another bolt of lightning, showing no intent to identify the target. However, unlike before, when this thunderbolt struck, a strong surge of power of demon god suddenly rose to intercept his attack. This seems like a seal used to conceal one's identity. From extreme speed to a sudden halt, standing proudly in the sky, the demon prince observed the house where the power of demon god arose, the single eye on his brow shimmering with light. Had the other not made a move, he might have failed to notice and been deceived. But now that they have interfered, even through the cover of the Lord's seal, the demon prince still discerned the true god power hidden beneath the might of the demon gods. Orderly and harmonious, yet completely at odds with the abyss. And atop that divine power, there also shone a striking thunder. The thunder god of the mortal realm. He did not deceive me. Ha ha ha. Smirking with laughter, the demon prince ceased his attack. His majestic eagle wings fluttered behind him, causing his form to rapidly descend. At this moment near the ground, the divine king's avatar was full of annoyance and regret. It was so close, just so close. He had thought that even if this distinctive abyss lord harbored ill will, he would at least ascertain his identity before taking action. But unexpectedly, the Lord had struck without warning. Divine power surged through his body, and in that moment, Zeus prepared to forsake this incarnation. After all, he is the king of all gods. If he chose to burn everything this incarnation had, the true body in the mortal realm could use it as a guide to retrieve his incarnate consciousness. It's just a shame about this origin power of an alien deity. With a solemn expression, Zeus was about to make a move. But in the next moment, the descending demon god seemed to have no intention of continuing his attack, instead retracting his power and landing on the earth. Attacking without cause. What is your intent, sir? Could it be that your previous command was but a jest, hence the abrupt change in orders? Silence for a brief moment. Zeus was somewhat uncertain of the other's intentions. But regardless, if he could avoid the worst outcome, the divine king naturally wanted to avoid it. So with cautiousness in mind, Zeus questioned the newcomer first. Attacking unprovoked? Ha 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 ha. Alien deity, you openly violated my orders, forcefully breaking through my city, and now you have the audacity to question me? It seems that the gods of the mortal realm are not so different from the abyss. We both do not care for those so-called reasons and only for our own fists, ha 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 ha. With uproarious laughter, the demon prince's 3 eyes appraised Zeus from head to toe, as if examining goods. Yes, just like that, the mother of demons would be pleased. Thinking thus, the demon lord did not dither. He waved his hand grandly. An invisible force descended on Zeus, attempting to carry him into the high skies. Come with me. I have been searching for you. It seems he has not deceived me. Alien god, you should know what I am seeking you for. Now, let's first return to Thunderpool. Boom! A short and intense vibration erupted as the demon prince's power collided with Zeus's instinctual resistance, and then effortlessly broke through the latter's defense. A struggle flashed through the eyes of the divine king's incarnation. Under normal circumstances, he would never tolerate such behavior. But now, a mighty ally might await him ahead, and the rewards of this journey were not yet fully dealt with. After much hesitation, even as he was drawn into the torn spatial rift, Zeus ultimately did not resist. Endure it for now. These lowly beings of the abyss are always so discourteous. There's no need for me to stoop to their level. This is all for a greater good. Once I unify the world in the future, there will be ample time to settle scores with these contemptible demons. Comforting himself inwardly, Zeus's mood returned to calm. After so many years, he was no longer his former self. Such a trivial matter, it truly meant nothing. Where are you taking me? Thunderpool. Isn't this realm itself Thunderpool? Also, your previous actions, regardless of whether they were justified or not. If it were someone else, they probably would have been slain by your hand already. Not necessarily. Traversing the void with the authority of the interface, the demon prince interrupted Zeus with a laugh. Chapter 1017. The Demon's Doctrine of Victory _2. Slightly tilting his head, he looked at the mortal deity before him, who was much smaller than a demon, barely able to contain the ice-cold greed in his eyes. The thunder god of the mortal realm. What delectable sustenance. The uninvited guest had been right. This was indeed his greatest tonic. If he could obtain this power, it would fill the void of his origin power. However, with the delicacy before him, the demon prince had no choice but to restrain his own desires. This was not the true body, just an incarnation of the mortal deity. Plus, the origin of a deity cannot be forcibly stripped away. Even as the laws of the present world became more stringent and the origin power repeatedly faded, now, even if the deities themselves were willing to help, stealing divine authority had become increasingly difficult. Not at all. Repeating again, the demon prince said half-smilingly, "According to what it told me, you are indeed the god who wields thunder in the mortal realm. Although the power of demon god I command is mighty, there actually isn't much authority or source power related to the thunderbolt. So my thunder and lightning could never really harm you, unless I also utilize the inherent power of the abyssal demon lord, inclined towards chaos and destruction." In the distant sky, dark thunderclouds surged downward. The interface power that dominates a realm spontaneously gathers at his side, shielding its master. With a humanoid body and eagle wings, hands like sharp talons, surrounded by thunder fire, wielding a long spear. Soaring through the sky of 862-11 Thunder Pool, the demon prince flew swiftly to his next target, striking dead a demon tainted with the Lord Seal with a casual bolt of lightning. Towering several stories high, in the center of his forehead, a solitary eye shimmering silver ceaselessly scanned the earth, before which nothing could hide. As one of the abyssal demon lords, the demon prince undoubtedly possessed an appearance different from the mortal deities. Yet, unlike his kin, this lord also retained a somewhat human-like form in many aspects. Because of this appearance, many demon gods had mocked his weakness, but unexpectedly, the mother of demons dwelling deep in the abyss seemed to quite appreciate it. Naturally, regardless, once the demon prince displayed his overwhelming strength, no one dared to argue with him anymore. Crack! Approaching another entity with a lord's aura, the demon prince casually unleashed another bolt of lightning, showing no intention of identifying the target. However, unlike before, when this bolt of thunder struck down, a surge of power of demon god abruptly rose, effectively blocking the attack. This seems to be a seal to conceal identity. From extreme speed to a halt in a moment, proud in the sky, the demon prince beheld the house where the power of demon god had risen, his forehead eye gleaming. If the other party hadn't acted, he might have been deceived. But since there was interference, even obscured by the Lord's seal, the demon prince could still see the true god power hidden beneath the demon god's strength. Orderly and harmonious, yet utterly incompatible with the abyss. Moreover, that divine power also bore remarkably conspicuous thunder. The thunder god of the mortal realm, it actually did not deceive me. Ha ha ha. With a wide grin, the demon prince ceased his attack. The wings of an eagle fluttered behind him, rapidly descending his form. At that moment near the ground, the divine king's incarnation was full of annoyance and regret. Just a little bit more, just a tiny bit more. He had thought that this unique abyss lord, even if harboring ill intent, would at least confirm his identity before taking action, but he hadn't expected the other to strike immediately. Divine power surged within him. At this instant, Zeus was prepared to abandon this incarnation. After all, he was the king of all gods, and if he chose to burn everything of this incarnation, then his true self in the mortal realm could use it as guidance to retrieve the consciousness of his incarnation. Only pitying the wasted origin power of the alien deity. With a gravely serious face, Zeus was about to act. But in the next moment, the demon god descending from above seemed not to continue the action. Instead, it converged its power and landed on the surface of the earth. Unprovoked aggression. What is your intention, sir? Could it be that your earlier command was merely a joke? Hence the sudden change, sir? After a moment of silence, Zeus was somewhat uncertain about the other's intentions. But whatever the case, if he could avoid the worst-case scenario, the divine king would naturally prefer to do so. Thus, with caution in his heart, Zeus took the lead in questioning the newcomer. Attacking for no reason? Ha 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 ha. A deity from an alien realm. You brazenly defy my commands, forcefully break out of my city, and now you have the audacity to question me? It seems that the gods of the mortal realm and the abyss are not so different after all. We care not for those so-called reasons, only for the strength of our own fists. Ha 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 ha. With a hearty laugh, the demon prince's 3 eyes scrutinized Zeus as if appraising goods. Yes, that's right, the mother of demons will be pleased. Thinking of this, the demon god acted without hesitation. With a wave of his large hand, an invisible force landed on Zeus, attempting to carry him up into the sky. Come, go with me. You are the one I've been looking for. It seems it did not deceive me. Alien deity, you should know what I want from you. For now, come back with me to the thunder pool. Boom! A short and intense vibration occurred as the power of the demon prince collided with Zeus's instinctive resistance, easily breaking through the latter's defense. Struggling flashed in the eyes of the incarnated divine king, as it's something he would never tolerate under normal circumstances. But now a great ally might be awaiting him ahead, and the rewards from this trip haven't been fully dealt with yet. After much hesitation, until he was carried by that force into the torn spatial rift, Zeus ultimately did not resist. Just endure a little longer. These lowly lives of the abyss have always been so rude. There's no need to fuss over them. All this is for a greater good. When I unify the world in the future, there will be plenty of time to settle scores with these wretched demons. Comforting himself with these thoughts, Zeus's mood returned to calm. After so many years, he was no longer the god he used to be. Such trivial matters truly meant nothing. Where are you taking me? The Thunder Pool. Isn't this realm itself the Thunder Pool? Moreover, your actions earlier, regardless of your reasons, would have gotten anyone else killed instantly by your hand. That wouldn't happen. Traveling through the void by leveraging the authority of the interface, the demon prince interrupted Zeus with a laugh. Tilting his head slightly, he stared at this deity from the mortal realm who was so much shorter than a demon, barely able to contain the coldness and greed in his eyes. The thunder god of the mortals. What a delicious morsel. The uninvited guest was right. This was indeed his greatest source of nourishment. If only he could obtain his power, the emptiness of his origin could be filled. Yet with the feast right before him, the demon prince had to restrain his own desire. This was not the true form. This was merely an incarnation of the deity. Furthermore, it was impossible to forcefully strip away the origin of a divine being. Even with the tightened laws of the current world and the repeated loss of origins, it's exceedingly difficult to usurp divine authority, even if the deity himself is willing to aid. That wouldn't happen. Repeating the words with a mocking smile, the demon prince said, "According to the information it gave me, you are the god-wielding thunder in the mortal realm. The power of the demon god I command is indeed mighty, but the source power related to the thunderbolt that I possess is actually quite limited, so my thunder and lightning couldn't really do anything to you, unless I also use the inherent power of the abyssal demon lord that leans towards chaos, destruction." Taking over the conversation, Zeus paid attention to nothing else. Indeed, just like the demon god said, he could not possibly be so easily killed by the opponent's thunder. The reason he mentioned it was also just to hint subtly. Chapter 10:18. Filling the gap. Whoosh! Small ripples appeared on the thunder sea, seemingly inconsequential waves lapping against the surface, yet they caused wrinkles to spread across the surrounding void. All was silent on the way to the center of this vast thunder sea, but the assertive voice of the demon prince seemed to linger in Zeus's ears. Win-win. Such a refined phrase. Although it was the first time he had heard it, the divine king could discern the underlying intention to appear cooperative and mutually beneficial, while actually aiming to achieve one's core objective. However, when this phrase fell from the lips of the abyssal demon lord, it instantly lost its original meaning, transforming into unabashed greed and aggressiveness. What does it mean for you to always win, calling that multi-win? Why not gorge yourself to death? Mentally scoffing at the demon god's arrogance, Zeus felt slightly relieved after learning the other party's harsh conditions. Repairing the thunder pool was indeed difficult, but he feared nothing from those who made demands. For the divine king, it was only the pure maniacs that he found most abhorrent. Compared to that, beings like the demon prince were much easier to handle. How is it, god of the mortal realm, have you figured anything out? As the thunder god of the mortal realm, this should be your forte. Don't tell me you can't even match that snake demon. Boom, boom, boom. The voice was like thunder, shaking this sea, carrying an awe-inspiring authority. At the edge of the thunder pool, a towering titan shouted loudly. This demon prince had been bringing Zeus here for a while, yet the latter had showed no sign of action, which caused some irritation in the prince's heart. Such a nuisance. Maybe the snake demon was right after all. Just as it had suggested, what he should do was to make this thunder god from the mortal realm find a way to complete his own incomplete bloodline. Having a genuine bloodline of a king, and then offering the secrets of this bloodline to the abyss, he would gain favor in the will of Tartarus, becoming a true demon prince in both name and reality. But the demon god did not trust that snake demon and did not want anyone tampering with his own body. If the will of the abyss cared only for the significance behind that bloodline, then it seemed he was not the indispensable one. So while the demon prince verbally agreed, he changed his mind as soon as he turned around, selling out his partner thoroughly. Now it seems that this thunder god from the mortal realm might not have the ability to repair the thunder pool at all. After all, the origin of divine power in the mortal realm and the strength of demons are different. It seems he couldn't easily change allegiance, even with the corresponding authority of a god. Previously, the demon god did not understand how difficult this not easy truly was, but Zeus's behavior seemed to prove that it was indeed difficult. As you have observed, identifying the problem is not difficult for me. But to solve it, you probably also know what the issue is. Living in the abyss for so long, you may not realize that, unlike the abyssal demon gods who can directly bestow strength upon weak demons, the deities of the mortal realm cannot arbitrarily control the allegiance of their own godhood's origin. So, even if I am willing to pay the price, there is no guarantee that it can be done. Standing in the center of the thunder pool within a massive vortex, the divine king incarnate, faced with the demon prince's urging, appeared troubled on the surface but was undisturbed in his heart. As he had said, the issue with the thunder pool was not complicated. Having seen this vortex with his own eyes, Zeus knew the situation in his heart. Its power was strong, but it was rootless water. Its foundation was completely the power of the abyss, with virtually no thunder origin present, and it was composed mostly of fragments from the alien realm that had yet to be fully assimilated. Thus, at this moment, the vortex represented the external manifestation of the thunder pool's strength, and the unique rules of the 862-11 interface, different from other realms of the abyss, caused its power to be consumed at all times. However, the divine power of a deity could be replenished as long as their godhood remained. But for a thunder pool without the corresponding origin to support it, its power is like the seas here, seemingly vast and endless, but if the vortex keeps draining away, it will eventually run dry one day. Therefore, solving the thunder pool's problem is both simple and difficult. The simplicity lies in the fact that if someone were to inject enough thunder origin to mix with the abyssal forces within it, it would then attempt to complete itself. The difficulty, however, is that Zeus, as the sovereign of the gods in the present world, cannot easily tear apart his own godhood, and even if he could, he would not lead the way in handing the origin power of the material world over to the abyss. Meeting the mother of demons might at best gain him an ally, but to lead the way in betraying the present world is to undermine his own authority. Under normal circumstances, this would be a condition that he would never agree to. Only now, for Zeus at this moment, he does have a second solution, but the crux of the problem lies in whether that snake demon has already monitored him so closely that it knows the details of his experiences in that memory world. Your Excellency. Feeling a chill in his heart, Zeus showed no sign of it outwardly. He shook his head reluctantly and turned to look toward the Titan on the horizon. The affairs of the true god of the present world's godhood's origin aren't a secret. If your Excellency has any interest, you could probably learn about these things from the abyss believers in the mortal realm, or even from the deities who have had covert interactions with you. Chapter 1019. Filling the gap _2. The snake demon who advised you on this matter, didn't it know about this issue? If so, then its intentions are indeed difficult for me to comment on. No. The voice trembled through the eardrums as the demon god spoke up to interrupt. In fact, its advice to me was not this. It was my own idea to have you repair the thunder pool, but now it seems I may have overthought it. His decision to change his mind seemed to be in vain. Hearing Zeus's explanation, the demon prince couldn't help but feel deeply disappointed. It had no desire to be led by the nose, but now it seems it had no other choice. Damn, is it possible that this thunder god of the mortal realm is in cahoots with the snake demon? Perhaps they bear no grudge against each other, and I am their intended target to conspire against? The power of the abyss boiled in his veins. Facing this complex issue, the demon prince instinctively wanted to give up thinking and resolve it with his fists. The vast thunder sea trembled, and thunderous roars echoed incessantly. After a long while, the demon god finally suppressed the malevolence in his heart. Since what I want is beyond your capability, then just do as it suggests. Deity of the mortal realm, I want you to complete my bloodline, allowing it to coexist between the present world and the abyss. Don't tell me again you can't do it, and you'd better not play any tricks. I'm well prepared. Wait a moment. Who said I couldn't do it? Zeus, who had just slightly relaxed due to the demon prince's negation, apparently was unaware that the snake demon knew he had obtained the origin of the thunder god from an alien realm. Zeus nearly thought he had been silently monitored all along, and only upon learning this did the divine king breathe a sigh of relief. Yet no sooner had one wave settled than another arose. Hearing the demon prince's second demand, Zeus's heart jolted with shock. Complete the bloodline? Indeed, his vague suspicion about this special demon god might actually be correct. But fulfilling its demand to complete the bloodline was absolutely impossible. You can do it? Are you playing me? Rustle, rustle. The thunder sea stirred up ripples, seemingly minor waves lapping the surface yet causing ripples to spread through the surrounding void. Without further conversation, until reaching the center of this vast thunder sea, the assertive voice of the demon prince seemed still to hover by Zeus's ear. Win-win. A very concise term. Though he had heard it for the first time, the divine king could discern the semblance of mutual benefit, which in reality served to achieve its core purpose. But when this term came from the mouth of the abyssal demon lord, it instantly lost its original meaning and turned into undisguised greed and tyranny. What do you mean by always winning, calling it multi-win? Why don't you just burst yourself? Grimly mocking the demon god's arrogance internally. But upon knowing the harsh conditions of the other party, Zeus actually was somewhat relieved. Repairing the thunder pool indeed was difficult, but he wasn't afraid of the other party having demands. To the divine king, only those pure lunatics were most loathsome. Compared to them, dealing with beings like the demon prince was much easier. So, god of the mortal realm, have you figured out anything yet? As the thunder god of the mortal realm, this should be your forte. Don't tell me you're even inferior to that snake demon. Boom, boom, boom. The sound was like thunder, shaking this sea, carrying an awe-inspiring authority. At the edge of the thunder pool, the towering titans loudly questioned. Since he had brought Zeus here, a constant span of time had passed, yet the opponent had still not acted, which caused some irritation in the demon prince's heart. Such a nuisance. Perhaps what the snake demon said was right. Just like it suggested, what he should do is have this thunder god from the mortal realm find a way to complete his own fragmented bloodline. By possessing a bloodline truly worthy of a king, and offering its secrets to the abyss, he would then win the favor of the will of Tartarus and become a genuine, fitting demon prince. However, the demon god didn't trust that snake demon, nor did it want others tampering with its body. If the will of the abyss cares only about the significance behind that bloodline, then it seems he is not irreplaceable after all. So, although the demon prince verbally agreed quite nicely, he immediately changed his mind and sold out the other party cleanly. But it seems now that this thunder god of the mortal realm might not actually have the capability to fully mend the Thunder Pool. After all, the origin of a deity's godhood in the mortal realm and the power of demons differ. It seems unable to easily change allegiance, even if it's a god holding the corresponding authority. Previously, the demon god did not know exactly how difficult this "not easily" was, but Zeus's performance seemed to prove that it indeed was very difficult. As you see, identifying the problem isn't hard for me. But to solve it, you probably understand what that entails, don't you? While you've been dwelling in the abyss for a long time and might not be aware, a demon god of the abyss might bestow strength directly to weaker demons, but gods of the mortal realm can't arbitrarily manipulate the allegiance of their own godhood origin. So even if I'm willing to pay the price, it might not necessarily be something I can achieve. Standing in the midst of the massive whirlpool at the Thunder Pool, facing the urging of the demon prince, the incarnate divine king showed difficulty, yet his heart remained calm. Just as he said, the issue with this Thunder Pool wasn't complex. Just by seeing this whirlpool, Zeus had already figured it out. Chapter 10:20. Filling the gap _3. Its strength is formidable, yet it stems from rootless water. Its foundation entirely relies on the power of the abyss, with almost no essence of thunder origin, mostly acquired from alien fragments that have yet to be fully assimilated. Thus, at this moment, this vortex is an external manifestation of the power from the Thunder Pool. Rules distinct from other abyssal layers consume its energy incessantly. However, as long as the godhood of a deity remains, it can continually regenerate divine power, even if it's being depleted. As for the Thunder Pool unsupported by corresponding origin, its power is like the seawater here, seemingly boundless but perpetually depleting, and will inevitably run dry someday if the whirlpool keeps flowing. Thus, solving the problem of the Thunder Pool is both simple and complex. The simplicity lies in merely needing someone to inject sufficient thunder origin for it to mix with the power of the abyss, and it would autonomically strive to replenish itself. The difficulty, however, is that Zeus, being the sovereign of the gods beneath the present world, let alone tearing apart his own godhood, would never personally hand over the origin power of the material world to the abyss. Meeting the mother of demons, at most, could lead to gaining an ally, but leading the betrayal of the present world would be undermining his own sovereignty. Theoretically, this is a condition he would never agree to. Yet for Zeus at the moment there is a second solution. But the critical issue is, has that snake demon already surveilled him to this extent, even knowing in detail his experiences within that memory world? Your Excellency. With a chill in his heart, Zeus did not show it on the surface. He shook his head helplessly, turning his gaze towards the titans at the horizon. It's no secret about the origin of the true god of the present world's godhood. If your Excellency wishes to understand, you might also learn about these through the abyss believers in the mortal realm, or perhaps the deities who are secretly in touch with you. Could it be that the snake demon advising your Excellency is unaware of this? If so, I really can't comment on its intentions.
No.
The voice resonated, and the demon gods interjected. In fact, its advice to me was not this. Fixing the Thunder Pool was my own idea, but it seems perhaps I thought too much. The change in plans proved futile, and upon hearing Zeus's explanation, the demon prince was significantly disappointed. It did not want to be manipulated by others, but it seemed to have no other choice at the moment. Damn it, could this mortal realm's thunder god possibly be an ally of that snake demon, actually having no enmity among themselves, and I am the real target they plan to scheme against together? Power of the abyss boiled in its veins. Facing such a complex issue, the demon prince instinctively wanted to give up thinking and solve it with fists. The vast thunder sea trembled, with thunderous roars echoing continuously. It took a while for the demon gods to finally suppress the malice in their heart. Since you can't do what I want, let's just do what it suggested. Mortal realms deities, I want you to complete my bloodline, so that it can coexist in both the present world and the abyss. Don't tell me again what you can't do, and you'd better not play any tricks. I'm already prepared. Wait a minute. Who said I couldn't do it? Just as he slightly relaxed due to the demon prince's denial, it seems that the snake demon didn't know about his acquisition of the origin of the alien realm's thunder god. Zeus was relieved just when he thought this entity had been silently monitoring him all the way. Now understanding the situation, the divine king finally caught his breath. But no sooner had one wave subsided, another arose, and upon hearing the demon prince's second request, Zeus's heart was shocked. To complete the bloodline? Indeed, his vague conjecture about this unique demon god was probably correct. But to complete its bloodline, that was absolutely impossible. Can you really do it? Are you playing games with me? Chapter 1021. Placenta. OM. In the blink of an eye, a considerable amount of time has passed since Zeus and the demon prince reached an agreement. The divine king's avatar plunged into the depths of the Thunder Sea, while the demon gods stayed alone on the surface, awaiting the outcome. The thunder water slapped against the surface, making a rumbling noise. Days went by, and the core of the world, which had seemed plentiful on the outside but empty within, truly began to change. Gold, silver, blue, purple. As the origin deep within gradually filled, new kinds of thunder began to emerge within this thunder pool that, compared to the long years of the mortal realm, was still relatively young in the abyss. A sense of vigorous vitality was beginning to burst forth from here, invigorating the whole world considerably. In this obscurity, the demon prince could clearly feel that ever since Zeus entered the core of the Thunder Sea, the interface power that was bestowed upon him by Thunderpool 862-11 had been steadily increasing and becoming more refined bit by bit. Even faintly, the bloodline within it thrummed with life, as if the changes in the world's laws were aiding its existence. And to these changes, the demon gods were naturally extremely satisfied. However, it was still not enough. Repairing the Thunder Pool wasn't about the simple infusion of strength. To truly earn the favor of the Abyss it depended much more on other things than just a mere injection of source power. Just like the Blood Mother Tree's suggestion of bloodline completion, the bloodline itself wasn't important. What mattered was the identity of the Divine King and the symbolic meaning behind his active participation. It is this that is of use to the Abyss, not merely the Divine King's bloodline. The Demon Prince obviously did not understand this before. But its luck was indeed good, because the strength Zeus offered to complete the Thunder Pool happened to meet this condition from another angle. So as the changes in the interface became greater and greater, until at a certain moment, quantitative change finally led to qualitative change. In the sky above Thunderpool 862-11, an immensely colossal will made its presence known there. And merely by existing there, all of the world's spacetime outside the core of the Thunder Sea unavoidably became frozen in place. At the same time, in a corner of the interface, the eight-armed snake demon looked up at the sky. It sensed the boundless and profound thoughts of Tartarus, and couldn't help but temporarily strive to contain its own presence. Without a doubt, in the current state of chaos, the Abyss is the most formidable existence without an equal. Beyond it, even the Blood Mother Tree is confined by the laws of the present world. If it were not for the lack of its own personality, it might have already achieved what Zeus could only dream of, becoming the true sovereign of all gods in chaos. The gift of the Abyss has finally arrived. But this kind of change doesn't seem like the disturbance of completing the bloodlines. It looks like Zeus truly did find a way out of the predicament, and the demon prince did not truly take my advice. Murmuring to himself and observing the commotion at the edge of the sky, this is the conclusion the eight-armed snake demon could only arrive at. After all, if it were about the perfection of the bloodlines, then the current commotion of the Abyss would probably not be like this and would also involve interactions with the laws of the present world. What a pity! It had originally planned to stoke the fire between the core of the material world and the other world in advance, making Tartarus passively assist in the fall of the future Divine King. However, it seems that things didn't go as smoothly as it had thought. Even because it's not a true body, the Great Serpent is temporarily unable to confirm whether this is simply a flaw in its own plan or if something has occurred that should not have happened. However, considering the changes currently happening in the interface, and even affecting the entire Abyss, the Great Serpent is certain that Zeus, although he did not make a move himself, must have paid some price related to the Divine King, because that is what Tartarus truly needs. And since it has nothing to do with the Divine King of this world, It can only pertain to the divine king of another realm. As for what that is, we can only wait and see later. Hiss. No helping it, as a mere avatar, this is all I can do. But you've overcome this challenge. How do you plan to get past Moya's challenge? Unaware that Moya has already created a demigod avatar for himself, but even if aware, the great serpent would not pay much mind. Because it is well aware that the magnificent power of the Mother of Demons, besides being ineffective against other abyssal demon lords, is genuinely absolute against the opponents of Tartarus. An avatar crafted by the goddess of beauty briefly endowed with the peak divine power of Moya will surely cope, but beyond that, nobody knows. Thus, with the mindset of watching a drama unfold, it hides in a corner of the interface. The 8-armed snake demon did not leave due to the hindrance of its first plan. Instead, it chose to continue waiting here, awaiting the further development of events. Huff. Open. Rustle, rustle. At the bottom of the thunder pool, following a low shout, the Divine King's avatar stepped back, shaking off those law chains wrapped around its body. Although the latter seemed somewhat reluctant, it chose to leave for the time being. After all, without the owner's consent, the absorption of origin is not sustainable. The thunder water surged endlessly, showing a look of exhaustion. Perceiving the greatly transformed thunder pool law and the faintly looming abyss will above the 9 heavens, Zeus's expression also involuntarily revealed a trace of relief. Chapter 1022, Placenta, _2. In just a few short months, a thunder god's origin that is nearly comparable to a true god with intermediate divine power has already been infused into the core of the thunder pool. Although compared to the otherworld thunder god, who is still close to the peak of powerful divine power even with some defects, this amount may not seem very significant, but it still represents a number that is painful for anyone to consider. Even though true gods cannot directly absorb source force, as Zeus, he is perfectly capable of offering this source force to the present world, and then use it to the greatest extent to enhance his own godhood. However, at this moment, what truly instills fear in Zeus is not the loss of origin power, but with the advent of the abyss he has finally understood the most fundamental need of Tartarus. So that's how it is. He knew then that the 8-armed snake demon scheme was definitely not just about a bloodline. It must be aiming directly for his position as the divine king. And his earlier inability to confirm its actions, coupled with a careful consideration that still led to rejection, successfully helped him avoid a major pitfall. Thanks to the gift of the power of destiny. Although Zeus does not know whether destiny has played any role in this. Thanks to the gift of the power of destiny. Even though Zeus doesn't know whether destiny has indeed played a part. In the blink of an eye, a significant amount of time has passed since Zeus and the demon prince reached an agreement. The divine king incarnated and sneaked deep into the Thunder Sea, leaving the demon gods alone on the surface, awaiting the outcome. Thunder water slaps the sea surface, making a rumbling noise. As days passed, this interface core, which was originally hollow inside despite its outward abundance, seemed to have indeed begun to undergo some changes. Gold, silver, blue, purple. With the deepening of the core becoming increasingly substantial, the thunder pool, which is still relatively young compared to the abyss and yet ancient enough compared to the years past in the mortal realm, has gradually evolved a number of newborn thunders. A sense of vigorous vitality gradually erupted from this place, making the entire world liven up a bit more. In the darkness, the demon prince could clearly feel that ever since Zeus entered the core of the Thunder Sea, the interface power bestowed upon it from 862-11 Thunder Pool has been constantly growing and becoming increasingly pure bit by bit. Even faintly, the bloodline within its body seemed to quiver slightly, as if the change in the world's law was aiding in its survival. And towards these changes, the demon gods were naturally extremely pleased. But this was still not enough. Repairing the Thunder Pool was never just about sheer strength. To truly attract the favor of the abyss it actually involved something more than simply the infusion of source force. Just as the great serpent suggested, the completeness of a bloodline is not important. What matters is the identity of the divine king and the symbolic significance of his deliberate actions. That is what is useful to the abyss, not just the bloodline of the divine king. Regarding this, the demon prince was clearly unaware before. But its luck is indeed very good because the strength offered by Zeus to replenish the thunder pool just so happened to fulfill this condition from another angle. So, as the changes in the interface grew more and more significant, until one moment, quantitative change finally led to a qualitative change. Above the sky of 862-11 Thunder Pool, an immensely majestic will appeared there, and its mere existence there caused the space and time of the whole world, except for the core of the Thunder Sea, to inevitably freeze. At the same time, in a corner of the interface, the eight-armed snake demon looked up at the sky. It sensed the vast and boundless intent of Tartarus and couldn't help but momentarily strive to contain its own presence. Without a doubt, in today's chaos, the abyss is the most powerful existence, without equal. Beyond it, even the Blood Mother Tree would be imprisoned by the laws of the world. If it were not for the lack of its own persona, it could probably do what Zeus dreams of doing, and become the true ruler of all the gods in chaos. But the gift of the abyss has come at last. However, such a transformation does not seem to be the commotion of bloodline completion. It seems that Zeus has indeed come up with a way to break the deadlock, and the demon prince did not truly follow my advice. Murmuring inwardly and gazing toward the distant disturbance in the sky, the eight-armed snake demon could only make such a judgment. After all, if it were completion of the bloodline, the current disturbance in the abyss would likely not be like this and would involve interactions with the laws of the present world. What a pity! It had originally planned to add fuel to the fire between the core of the material world and the other world in advance, turning Tartarus into a passive aid for the shattering of the future Divine King's position. But now, things do not seem to be going as smoothly as it thought. And because it is not the true body, the Great Serpent cannot be certain whether this is simply a flaw in its own plan or if something that was not supposed to happen has occurred. However, considering the changes currently occurring in the interface and even indirectly affecting the entire abyss, the Great Serpent can confirm that Zeus, although not participating himself, has definitely paid some price related to the Divine King, because that's precisely what Tartarus truly needs. And since it's not something related to the Divine King of the present world, it can only be the Divine King of the other world. As for what exactly that entails, one will have to wait and see. Hiss! No choice, as a mere avatar, this is all I can do. But you've passed this hurdle. Moya's challenge? How do you plan to overcome it? Not knowing that Moya had already shaped a divine avatar for itself. Even if the Great Serpent knew, it wouldn't care much. Because it is well aware that the mighty power of the Mother of Demons, aside from being ineffective against other abyssal demon lords, is genuinely formidable against any opponent of Tartarus. An avatar created by the goddess of beauty briefly embodying a Moya at the peak of great divine power will definitely be fine, but no one knows about anything beyond that. Thus, with the mentality of watching a play unfolding, it hides in a corner of the interface. The eight-armed snake demon did not leave due to the obstruction of its first plan but chose to continue waiting here, waiting for further developments. Hum. Who? Open. Rustling. At the bottom of the thunder pool, accompanying a low shout, the Divine King avatar steps back, shaking off the law chains wrapped around its body. Although the latter seems somewhat reluctant, it chooses to temporarily leave. After all, without the owner's consent, it's impossible to sustain the absorption of origin power. The thunder water is surging, boundless, and infinite, showing an exhausted expression and sensing the vastly transformed thunder pool law and the faint abyss will suspended above the skies. Zeus also reveals a hint of apprehension in his demeanor. In just a few months, an origin power nearly comparable to an intermediate divine power true god was infused into the core of this thunder pool. Although this pales in comparison to the peak of great divine power of the alien realm's thunder god, even if somewhat incomplete, it is still a considerable loss. Even though true gods cannot directly absorb source power, as Zeus, he could have dedicated this source power to the present world and maximized its use to strengthen his godhood. However, at this moment what truly causes Zeus to feel apprehensive is not the loss of origin power, but with the arrival of the abyss he finally understands Tartarus's most fundamental need. So that's how it is. He knew it. The plot of that eight-armed snake demon is definitely not just about a bloodline. it must have been directly targeting his position as Divine King. And he was not sure of its intentions before, but out of caution, he refused, and this act of refusal successfully allowed him to avoid a large pitfall. Thanks to the gift of the power of destiny. Although Zeus does not know whether destiny played any role in this, thanks to the gift of the power of destiny. Although Zeus does not know whether destiny played any role in this. Chapter 10:23, Blessing. Splash. A small portion of the Thunderpool's repair was completed, and Zeus had finally sorted out the ins and outs of this interface. Pushing aside the law chains that still emanated a yearning desire, he chose not to continue imbuing the origin, but to soar away instead. In his perception, to truly restore the Thunderpool to a state of perfection would likely require the filling of it with all the origin he held in his hands. After all, as a placenta fabricated by the Abyss in imitation of Zeus, the difficulty of fully repairing it was no different than creating another thunder god whose thunder origin would seem almost indistinguishable from his. Of course, Zeus did not need to go to such lengths. What the Abyss will originally cared about was not the quantity of the thunder origin. Yet, even so, he did not wish to restore the site in one breath to a degree that would satisfy the demon gods. And so, the vast thunder sea roiled slightly, following the path he had taken before. The Divine King's incarnation leapt forth. Swift, breaking the surface, he looked up at the sky. In the sky of 862-11, as the repair of the Thunderpool was halted midway, the Abyss will that originally descended also hovered for a few minutes before finally receding. In the empty sky, only the Demon Prince was left, whose aura had undergone a subtle change. On its body, the interface power that had already reached its limit seemed to have had its restrictions lifted, and if it so wished, it could continue to bring more layers of the Abyss under its control. However, it was evident that such a degree of change was far from satisfying the appetite of the demon gods. So much so that the present being was filled not with any hint of joy, but with anger and discontent. Roar! Damn it! What are you doing, mortal realm's thunder god? Awaking from his closed-eyed contemplation, the demon prince's face was filled with shock and fury. A moment ago he was immersed in the rapid elevation of his power's upper limits, just waiting to conquer more planes and turn them into real power he could hold in his grasp. But in the next moment, the favor of the Abyss will was unceremoniously brought to an end. The whole process seemed stuck at the critical point of complete metamorphosis, leaving the demon gods with a fishbone in their throat. And watching Zeus emerging from the water, he seemed to have found the culprit, reaching out again to directly apprehend the Divine King's incarnation before him. Speak, mortal realm's god. Why did you stop? Do you not realize? Just a little more, just one more bit, and I could have become the most favored being in Tartarus, rightfully ruling over the 36 layers of the Abyss as the Demon Prince. And as the first prince, I would be the only possible choice for the Abyss King. No, this is nothing but your illusion. Once again being rudely seized in hand, this time Zeus appeared nonchalant. He looked indifferently at the furious demon god, with not a hint of panic on his face. I am very clear in my perception. To garner sufficient favor from the Abyss for you, the power I would need to expend is far beyond double that of just now. Your a little more is actually much more. As for the Abyss King, excuse me for being blunt. Even if I melted myself entirely into the Thunder Pool, the favor gained would never be enough for that. In fact, I highly doubt that the Abyss of today has the capability to create the so-called Master of Abyss. Probably not, at least that's what Zeus believes. For, with the repair of the Thunder Pool, he had also glimpsed the true strength of Tartarus as it is now. If there are levels within the great divine power, the other party would likely have already stood at the pinnacle of the path, ready to touch upon even grander and loftier characteristics. This power truly exceeded Zeus's expectation. Yet even so, the Divine King did not believe that they had the ability to shape a real Master of Abyss. After all, whether it is demon gods or the demon prince, even that never-seen mother of demons is most likely the same. They may receive the support of the Abyss interface power, with the latter two even having the prospect of obtaining power comparable to the great divine power, but its essence is still derived from borrowing from Tartarus. However, if the abyss were to produce a true ruler, a monarch capable of wielding a part of the entirety of Tartarus's strength, then it would not be so simple. At the end of the day, unless one is the incarnation of the world itself, the support of interface power too has its limits. The existence of genuine great divine power has a limit to the extent of maintaining personification, and naturally the interface support also has a limit which is related to the level of power of the provider. Although the power of the abyss is strong, it is incomparable to that of the present world. The position of the God King in the present world can be maintained, as it can bear almost limitless strength. If the present world's will were to bestow sufficient favor, Zeus has no doubt that like the first-generation God King, he could wholly acquire power even greater than the abyss of today. Splash! A small portion of the Thunderpool's repair was completed, and Zeus had finally sorted out the ins and outs of this interface. Pushing aside the law chains that still emanated a yearning desire, he chose not to continue imbuing the origin but to soar away instead. In his perception, to truly restore the Thunderpool to a state of perfection would likely require the filling of it with all the origin he held in his hands. After all, as a placenta fabricated by the abyss in imitation of Zeus, the difficulty of fully repairing it was no different than creating another thunder god whose thunder origin would seem almost indistinguishable from his. Chapter 1024. Blessing_2. Of course, Zeus did not need to go that far, as the abyss will wasn't particularly concerned with the amount of the thunder origin. Even so, he had no wish to restore this place to an extent that would satisfy the demon gods in one go. The vast thunder sea slightly stirred, following the road he had taken before, and the divine king's avatar leaped out. Whoosh! Emerging from the water's surface, he lifted his head to look at the sky. In the sky of Zone 862-11, as the restoration of the Thunderpool stopped midway, the abyss will that had initially descended hesitated for a while before ultimately withdrawing. In the empty sky, only the demon prince, whose aura had undergone some changes, was left behind. On its body, the enhancement from the abyss interface, which had already reached its limits, seemed to have its constraints lifted. Should it desire, it could continue to bring more layers of the abyss under its control. However, it was quite obvious that such a change was far from satisfying the appetite of the demon gods. As a result, the demon prince was far from elated at this very moment, filled instead with anger and resentment. Roar! Damn it! What are you doing, mortal realm's thunder god? Shocked awake from his meditation, the demon prince's face was full of astonishment and fury. Just a moment ago, he was immersed in the rapid increase of his power's upper limit, ready to conquer more layers and turn it into tangible strength in his grasp. But in the next instant, the favor of the abyss will was mercilessly cut off. The whole process was like being stuck at the critical point of complete transformation, which was exceedingly frustrating for the demon gods. And watching Zeus, who had just emerged from the water, as if finding the main culprit, it reached out again, directly seizing the avatar of the divine king in front of its eyes. Speak, god of the mortal realm. Why did you stop? Do you not know? Just a little more, just one more little bit, and I could have become Tartarus's most favored being, rightly ruling over the 36 layers of the abyss as the demon prince. As the first prince, I would be the only possible choice for the abyss king. No, that's merely your illusion. Again being rudely grasped in its hand, this time Zeus appeared completely unruffled. He calmly looked at the furious demon god, his demeanor showing not the slightest hint of panic. I am clearly aware, to charm the abyss into bestowing you with sufficient favor, the power I would need to expend is far more than double what I've just done. What you think of as just a little more is actually still a lot more. As for the Abyss King, forgive my frankness. Even if you were to refine me entirely into the Thunderpool, the favor you would receive would still not achieve that. In fact, I highly doubt if the current Abyss has the ability to shape the so-called Abyss King. Probably not, at least that's what Zeus thinks. Because with the repair of the Thunderpool, he had also glimpsed the true level of power of the current Tartarus. If there were levels among great divine powers, then the other party was probably already standing at the peak of this road, one step further from touching even more grand and lofty characteristics. Such power did indeed exceed Zeus's expectations, but despite this, the Divine King did not believe that the other party had the ability to shape a true master of the abyss. After all, be it demon gods or demon princes, or even the never-before-seen mother of demons, it's probably the same for all of them. They may receive the enhancement of the abyss interface power, and the latter two could even hope to attain power comparable to great divine power, but their essence is still borrowing from Tartarus itself. But if a true master is to be born within the abyss, one who could mobilize a part of the entire power of Tartarus, then that is probably not so simple. Ultimately, unless it is an avatar of the world itself, the enhancement from interface power also has its limits. A proper great divine power has limits on how much personified force it can maintain, and naturally, interface power enhancements would have their limits too. It's just that their limits are related to the level of power of the one granting the enhancement. And although the power of the abyss is strong, compared to the current world, it is who knows how much weaker. The position of God King of the mortal realm can be pursued, as the power it can carry has almost no limits. If the will of the present world were willing to bestow enough favor, Zeus had no doubt that he could obtain strength even greater than the current abyss, just like the first-generation Divine King did. The sound of rushing water. The restoration of the Thunder Pool had been completed in part, and Zeus finally understood the ins and outs of this realm's interface. Pushing aside the law chains that were still emanating a yearning desire, he did not continue to infuse his origin but chose to leave by flying away. In his perception, to truly restore the Thunder Pool to a state of perfection would likely require the filling of his entire origin. After all, as the placenta that the abyss emulated from him, to fully fix it would be no different than creating another thunder god whose origin was almost indistinguishable from his own. Of course, Zeus did not need to go that far. What the Abyssal cared about was not the amount of thunder origin, but even so, he did not wish to entirely restore the place to a degree that would satisfy the demon gods in one go. So the vast thunder sea stirred slightly, and following the same path he came by, the Divine King's incarnation leaped out. Whoosh! Breaking the water's surface, he looked up at the sky. In the sky of 862-11, with the suspension of the Thunder Pool's restoration, the abyss will that had originally descended also lingered for a while before ultimately retreating. In the empty sky, only the demon prince, whose aura had changed slightly, remained. Upon its body, the limits of the interface power, which had already reached the extreme, seemed to have been lifted. Should it wish, it could continue to bring more layers of the abyss under its control. But obviously, this level of change was far from satisfying the demon god's appetite to the point that it was not slightly pleased but rather full of anger and unwillingness. Roar! Damn it! What are you doing, thunder god of the mortal realm? The demon prince awoke from its meditation with a start, its expression filled with shock and rage. Just a moment ago, it was still immersed in the rapid increase of its power limit, ready to conquer more realms to turn them into tangible strength in its grasp. But the next moment, the favor of the abyss will was unceremoniously cut off. The whole process seemed to be stuck at the threshold of complete transformation, making the demon god uncomfortable like a bone stuck in its throat. And seeing Zeus bursting through the water was like finding the culprit, as it reached out again to directly apprehend the incarnation of the Divine King before its eyes. Speak, God of the mortal realm. Why did you stop? Do you not realize? Just a bit more, and I could have become the most favored one in Tartarus, the demon prince who legitimately dominates the 36 layers of the abyss. And as the first prince, I would have been the only possible choice for the Abyss King. No, that is merely your delusion. Once again rudely grasped in hand, Zeus this time appeared nonchalant. He looked at the angry demon god indifferently, his expression unflustered. I'm quite clear on my senses. To obtain enough favor from the abyss for you, the strength I would need to expend is far more than double what I did just now. What you think is just a bit more is in fact still a lot more. As for the Abyss King, I must say frankly, even if you were to refine me entirely into the Thunder Pool, the favor you obtain would still not be enough to achieve that. In fact, I have my doubts that the current Abyss has the ability to create the so-called Abyss King at all. Perhaps not, at least that's what Zeus believes. Because with the repair of the Thunder Pool, he had also glimpsed the actual strength level of Tartarus as of now. If there were ranks among the great divine powers, then the other side has probably already reached the pinnacle of their journey. One more step and they could touch upon a more magnificent and lofty essence. Such strength indeed surpasses Zeus's expectations. However, even so, the Divine King does not believe the other has the ability to create a true master of Abyss. Chapter 1025 Meeting. Without wasting any time, as soon as the sound came from the opposite side of the Gate of Sacrifice, Aphrodite pointed her finger and ignited the pile of blood and flesh sacrifices accumulated on this barren planet. Amidst the billowing smoke, countless essences of blood and flesh blurred the law and order of this place, and the space-time tunnel connecting the two sides also began to stabilize. As divine power vibrated, a crystal stone containing a godless body slowly moved towards the Gate of Sacrifice. However, as it approached, the originally stable portal began to tremble again. The power of the sacrifice clashed with the surrounding laws, continuously neutralizing the crystal's influence from crossing beyond the realm. Encased within the crystal stone was Aphrodite's latest creation, a powerful shell fused with the strength of the abyssal demon lord and the divine power of the goddess of beauty. Once the body is sent into the abyss, the mother of demons can immediately go to meet the visitor from afar. After all, not long ago, Moya had once again received communications from 862-11 Thunder Pool. Despite the complexity of the content, the specifics about the Divine King's incarnation were fully intact. Clearly, even after striking a firm deal with Zeus, the Demon Prince had no intention of reneging on this aspect. It wasn't out of any particular fidelity, but simply to avoid trouble. After all, without enough favor from the Abyss, the Demon Prince couldn't be sure whether he would encounter opposition from Moya on the path to conquest. Putting oneself in the shoes of Moya, they would likely not allow the birth of a second demon with great power to arise from the Abyss. It means that the mother of demons herself is ineligible for the throne of the Abyss King. Otherwise, they would have been natural enemies long ago. But the thunder god of the mortal realm, isn't that just the god king of Olympus? God King Zeus. Has he actually come? Unaware of the complexities, the demon prince never mentioned its deal with Zeus. The mother of demons, upon receiving the communication, felt a slight joy in her heart, and her earlier sense of wistfulness was instantly dispersed. Watching the body slowly crossing over, Moya never expected her previous, discreet desires to actually come true. The God King of the mortal realm had finally taken notice of her, and even willingly dispatched an incarnation to meet her personally. Such a sudden visit really caught her unprepared. After all, she had long revered God King Zeus. Long ago, from the mouth of Aphrodite, she heard of this later era deity, his image as the divine king, his conquest over Earth Mother Gaia and his amorous nature. These were enough to make the now somewhat demonically minded Moya appreciate him. Zeus's brief defeat upon entering the abyss not only failed to disappoint her but further confirmed his adversarial stance against Hell, which pleased her even more. Her interests and emotions aligned at this moment, so much so that when Aphrodite and she decided on the mode of communication, the mother of demons didn't hesitate to mix business with pleasure. She sent out a fragment of space-time that should have belonged to the abyss, despite knowing full well how difficult it is for things to leave the abyss once they enter. This action was almost certain to be met with a bit of disdain from Tartarus, yet she did it and was prepared to continue. If it were only for Aphrodite's sake, she naturally wouldn't need to go to such lengths. However, the mother of demons did not choose to give up, and affected by those intricate thoughts she barely understood herself, she ultimately chose the contradictory ostrich approach. Note 1. It's here. With thoughts flickering in her mind, time kept slowly slipping by. Under the countless sacrifices of the flesh and blood of evil creatures, the crystal encapsulating the body still gradually fell from the starry sky into the abyss. Anticipation in her heart, Moya directed her gaze towards the crystal. There, Aphrodite's masterpiece lay as if in deep slumber. Flawless skin tone, the immutable face of a female, perfect and touching figure, a pair of curved and delicate demonic horns, and a tail looped at the top into a heart shape. At this moment, as she looked at this appearance that combined the styles of deity and abyss, Moya herself felt a touch of excitement. But this fluctuation was fleeting, quickly replaced by tremendous jubilation. "Good, Aphrodite, you've done well." Overjoyed, Moya felt lucky at this moment. The avatar that carried her consciousness had just completed. Without it, Moya really wouldn't have known how to meet Zeus. After so many years, she still missed her former self as one of the Titans' deities, yearning and fearing her strong and tyrannical father. She wished to return to the mortal realm, to be seen by all gods as one of their own rather than an outsider. Yet, on the other hand, she knew she was no longer a god. The abyss was not the underworld. If the gods knew of her existence, they would be filled with dread and repulsion, even if she one day emerged from the abyss with great power. But now it was different. This is a good start. And now, let me try. With a mere thought, Moya's will immediately surged into the crystal in front of her. The transparent crystal shattered on cue, revealing the perfect body inside. A strong will flowed into it, awakening the deeply slumbering flesh. Whoosh! As eyes opened, the color of chaos stirred without wind. An inexplicable transformation began in an instant. That was a trait from Moya's true form, a unique power she naturally possessed. Chapter 1026. Meeting_2. Or in other words, as the mother of demons, Moya herself is not devoid of abilities besides birthing demons. To be precise, her conceptual appearance is an ability in itself. Under the influence of this power, her originally flawless appearance appeared as though it was about to transform again. However, after Moya's heart hung in trepidation for a moment, a power formed by a combination of the current world divine power and the quasi-god power of the abyss surged from every inch of her skin. In just a moment, it smoothed over the changes caused by the former and maintained the body's previous appearance. Good, very good. That's it. The harsh, grating voice, more discomforting than a hard object scraping across glass, was no more. Instead, it was replaced by a melodious and captivating voice, like singing. As she sized up her new body, Moya was extremely excited. The powerful force unconsciously radiated outwards, but the next moment, her expression changed slightly. "Wait, what's going on? It seems you've noticed it. However, Your Excellence, as I mentioned before, my power can only just bear your will for now, and it cannot touch the power inherent in your true body. So if you don't want it to become a disposable item that can't even last a day, stay as far away from your true body as possible." "All right." Without hesitation, in just a flash, the new Moya disappeared, and the enormous creature hidden within the chaotic air currents also became unresponsive. With a new body, Moya was even unwilling to allow another body to remain in an awakened state. She only left a message for Aphrodite, then hastily left the other side of the gate of sacrifice. "Very well, goddess of beauty of the mortal realm, I remember your merit. I will reward you generously. But let's talk about this when I return. Just wait a bit longer on your end." Without needing to ask further, with the power of her true body, Moya could be sure that hardly any true god could see through this flesh. According to the information from the Demon Prince, that incarnation of the God King doesn't even possess the level of a strong divine power, not worth mentioning at all. Unless wielding a special power that allows the true self and the incarnation to maintain a unique consciousness despite spatial and rule distances, this incarnation could not possibly see through her disguise. Therefore, in the eyes of others, this is her most authentic appearance. Just like this, I'm now indistinguishable from ordinary demon gods. Though both in the abyss at this moment, Moya similarly dared not attract the power of her true body unless she wanted this shell to be assimilated by that power as well. But this was not a big deal. After all, she was not headed to battle. God King Zeus. I wonder if it's innate fate. Ever since the first time I heard this name, I felt there was some connection between us. Perhaps this is the guidance of fate, the current world God King and the mother of demons of the abyss. What fitting identities? Unable to help but mutter to herself, she felt a bit nervous. Damn, I forgot to ask. Does that thunder god Zeus have any likes? Speaking of which, I forgot to ask too. That esteemed mother of the abyss? I wonder what she likes? Having left the boundary of 862-11 Thunder Pool, she continued to delve deeper into the end of the abyss, not knowing how long the demon prince had taken her, until arriving at a desolate plain. Zeus was then told they could stop. The demon god didn't plan to stay long. Its only job was to bring Zeus here and then take him back, because Moya didn't want to meet it. Although this genuinely annoyed the demon prince didn't really care about that. Just as it was about to leave, the God King incarnation stopped it. What the mother of demons likes is indeed a very important question. After all, he is not someone like Poseidon who might only force things. Zeus knows the art of tact and strategy. The simple to coerce the weak. But when facing another power, mere brute force is useless. To leave a good impression on this important ally, the God King incarnation also tried to prepare more. Even if he hadn't learned about this after coming to the Thunder Pool, he probably would have brought various gifts from the mortal realm. Unfortunately, to Zeus' question, the demon prince knew nothing. Or it's better to say that demons never pay attention to such matters, even if it's different from other demon gods. All right then. He shook his head slightly, accepting this fact, and Zeus found a spot to sit in this desolate world. A faint light flickered in his hand. The God King initially intended to immediately start a live broadcast to his true body, but after hesitating for a moment, he stopped. Not sure how long it would take for Moya to arrive, to prevent depleting the already scarce power of the abyss prematurely, he thought it better to conserve it. He would wait for the other party to arrive and then find an opportunity to start. After all, when the connection was established, he could sync his previous memories as well. There should be no problem. Silently nodding, he looked around the desolate yet surprisingly uncorrupted world that greatly resembled chaos from the legends of creation, maintaining his dignity at all times. He didn't know if this was useful, but he did it anyway, quietly waiting, unable to distinguish day from night. Chapter 1027. Meeting_3. Meanwhile, at the edge of the realm, after who knows how long, Moya hurriedly arrived in silence. Huff! Feeling quite different than usual right now, nervousness and hesitation continue to build up in her heart. Stepping onto the desolate land, Moya bit her teeth slightly and mustered up the courage to move forward. In that instant, she felt that she was no longer the mother of demons, but the Titan god Mnemosyne. New body, weakened strength, bloodlines no longer filled with the chaotic aura of the abyss. All of these changes seemed to have expelled her past brutality and madness, transforming her into a girl who had stepped into a strange world. Continuing to walk forward, at some moment, the silhouette of the divine king incarnate seemed to be at the end of her sight. Is that thunder god Zeus? Tall, handsome, dignified. Even when solitary, he still carried himself with grace. The mysterious attraction surfaced in her heart, causing her heartbeat to involuntarily quicken. Moya did not realize that the power of the goddess of beauty ultimately belonged to Aphrodite. To counteract her inherent rules, the forces of love and beauty were constantly stirring within her new body. Just as the power of the abyss subtly influenced her mind, making her irritable and frantic, wasn't she just as undefended against the divine power of beauty she was now willingly embracing? Perhaps it was the guidance of destiny. They were meant to rekindle this natural bond, bringing forth the birth of the 9 destined muse goddesses. Although, if things went as expected, there would be no more muses symbolizing art, singing, and inspiration in this world. Nonetheless, both Zeus and Mnemosyne were indispensable for whatever was to be born. Unlike Cronus, who set ablaze everything, the mother of demons had never used the fire of death to cut away the past at the turning of the epic. Therefore, without realizing it, even though not a single word had been exchanged yet, Moya had already come to think of the figure at the end of her sight as the source of her fascination. Am I so easily swayed by someone else? Moya didn't know, but under the influence of many factors, she quickly convinced herself. How could a demon fallen into the abyss be compared to a deity of the current world? And as the god of the material world, possessing genuine great divine power, it didn't seem wrong for her to feel a stir in her heart. If she had had such a partner in the past, even if not the only one, how could she have fallen to her current plight? The regrets of the past seemed to have been satisfied at this moment, which made Moya even more convinced that her current reactions stemmed from her true heart. Who is this? As if connected by a form of telepathy, while Moya was immersed in her own world, the Divine King incarnate sensed something, and the previously vague feeling now seemed to be within reach. Looking back, although he had already prepared himself mentally, the sight of Moya's true appearance still startled Zeus. Perfect, flawless, stunning. At just one glance, this androgynous face seemed to etch itself onto Zeus's heart, moving him even more than any goddess or beautiful mortal youth he had encountered before. How could this be? Was this some sort of illusion technique? Zeus could accept beauty, but he could not comprehend such beauty that so perfectly fit his own ideals. Heartbeat slowing by half a beat, although his breathing had become heavy, Zeus was still Zeus after all. Not being dazzled by the beauty, he quietly tapped into his divine power, probing repeatedly. Yet, after a moment he found nothing amiss. Everything before him was genuinely real. Chapter 1028, Meeting. Mortal realm, the divine domain of Asgard. In the center of the realm lies a mountain, purely condensed from the power of faith. Standing atop this peak, strikingly similar to Olympus, one can overlook the vast lands, where illusory kingdoms divided and enveloped by various divine powers faintly emerge. Only the most devout believers of the deities can come here after death, then offer all that remains of themselves to the entities they worshipped. Bathed in this boundless faith, Zeus raises his hand in a gesture of grasping, as if holding the entire world in his palm. With each breath, the millennia of faith accumulated by the fourth generation of mankind surge like tides. Amid ethereal light and shadow, 12 pillars reaching the heavens become indistinctly visible. Surrounded by them, the figure of Zeus appears divine. Athena, Aphrodite, Demeter, Hestia, Moanda, Hephaestus, Ares, Apollo, Zephyrus. 5 male gods, 5 female goddesses. It seemed as if each group was missing one. However, the missing Poseidon from the former had already been arranged by the Divine King to be supplemented, and it would not be vacant for long. The latter group, though seemingly lacking a practical candidate, had actually been filled by Zeus quite early on. Therefore, even though no second person knew of this affair, and Zeus planned to choose a legitimate deity to take on the role of the 12th principal god before truly acting on it, it still did not change the fact that the 12 pillars were already perfect. Thus, a long time ago, the king's ceremony crafted by the Divine King himself had already been complete. The king was still searching for candidates for principal god, even keeping a spot available to add nominees at any time. After all, even the principal gods are subject to wavering, whether it be of their own volition or through coercion, just like Poseidon. Therefore, whether to find or to create, 12 powerful divine powers closely linked to me, not a single one of them can be absent. 6 male, 6 female, corresponding to the former 12 titans. This is also one of the hidden clauses of the ceremony. Murmuring to himself, Zeus used to be very troubled by this. But 1,000 years have passed, and his endeavors were not limited only to seeking pleasure among humans. As things stand, even if the seat of the principal god becomes contested, the Divine King can at any moment replace it with a new candidate, and there's more than one who could fulfill this role. With the colossal power of faith accumulated in Asgard over 1,000 years, even a pig, as long as it is a naturally born deity, could be transformed by Zeus into an immensely powerful god of 1,000,000 pigs. Zephyrus is an example. The emergence of faith has completely shattered the inherent order of the strengths and weaknesses of true gods, and this power of life and death is precisely what he has always pursued. Of course, it would be even better if this world had no spirit realm, no land of no light, no land of eternal night, no gods that dared to defy him. Thus, Zeus came here today for this very purpose that he has long sought. The abyss, the most terrifying yet harmless of the primordial gods. Since its birth, it has existed in silence, never causing a sliver of trouble for the successive divine kings. Instead, it is their shared prison. Even Tartarus, which was originally most likely Typhon's father god, provides no reason for the current divine king to see it as a threat, particularly after recently receiving the message from his avatar, which filled the divine king with joy, an unexpected adventure that yielded a divine artifact and an origin. Though part of the origin was used by the avatar, a significant amount still remains. More importantly, the avatar completed the main purpose of its mission quite well, finding the existence foretold by Zeus's divine prophecy. A great entity capable of manipulating the power of the abyss, the mother of demons revered by billions. The former is icing on the cake, while the latter, if not fuel in the snow, is a great force that could sway the state of the world. Especially the message that informed Zeus, this mother of demons might very well be his natural ally, the sixth wife in some sense. This made Zeus regret not having acted sooner, yet he couldn't help but exclaim that it's still not too late. He also never expected that to this day, he could still gain support in such a manner. Perhaps this is the destiny inherent to a divine king. It is the duty I was born to fulfill. The benefits it brings are merely a token reward bestowed upon its executor by destiny. Chuckling, the mood of the divine king at this moment is quite delightful. Yet he remains vigilant, constantly tensing his spirit. According to the description from the previous message, it won't be long before his avatar personally meets with that mother of demons. At that point, she will provide him with a live broadcast of her mental domain, which is exactly why Zeus came to Asgard. After all, an avatar is just an avatar. It underestimated Tartarus's isolating abilities, causing the previous message to be significantly delayed before reaching Zeus. Compared to the mortal realm, it is here less likely to conflict with the laws of the abyss, and so, he waits in silence. Zeus is expectant, yet his heart remains unhurried. Time flows slowly by, its length indeterminate. At a certain moment, within the palace on the central mountain of Asgard, a hint of joy flashes across the eyes of the divine king. From the void beyond the borders of the realm comes a signal similar to the previous one. Chapter 1029, Meeting _2. Mortal Realm, Asgard. At the center of the interface, there stands a mountain peak formed purely by the power of faith. Standing at the summit of this mountain, which greatly resembles Olympus, one can overlook the land and see the illusionary kingdoms, divided and enveloped by various divine powers. Only the most devout believers of all gods can come here after death, and then offer up all that remains of themselves to the entity they worshipped. Bathed in this boundless faith, Zeus raises his hand, as if holding the entire world within his grasp. In a single breath, the millennia of faith accumulated by the fourth generation of humanity surges like a tide. Amidst the illusory lights and shadows, 12 celestial pillars momentarily become visible. Under their collective embrace, the figure of Zeus appears sacred. Athena, Aphrodite, Demeter, Hestia, Moanda, Hephaestus, Ares, Apollo, Zephyrus. 5 male gods, 5 female gods, each seeming to lack one member. However, the missing Poseidon from the former has already been prepared by the divine king. The vacancy will not last long. Although the latter seems to lack an actual candidate, in reality, Zeus had already filled this position early on. Thus, even though no second person knows this matter, and Zeus plans to select an upright and authoritative deity to occupy this 12th principal god position before actually doing anything, this does not change the fact that the 12 pillars have long been perfected. Thus, long ago, the king's ceremony personally cast by the divine king was already a complete addition. It's just that the divine king still searches for candidates for the principal god, even keeping a spot open to add someone at any time. After all, even the principal god can waver, perhaps actively or perhaps passively, just like Poseidon. Therefore, whether it's searching or creating, 12 powerful divine powers closely associated with me, none can be absent. 6 males and 6 females, corresponding to the once 12 titans, are also one of the hidden clauses of this ceremony. Musing to himself, Zeus had once been very troubled by this. But as millennia passed, he wasn't just about seeking pleasure in the mortal world. As of now, even if the position of principal god differs, the divine king can replace it with a candidate at any time, and not just one but multiple can serve. Underneath the vast power of faith accumulated over millennia in Asgard, even a pig, if it is a naturally born deity, Zeus could still transform it into an omnipotent deity of 1,000,000 pigs. Zephyrus is an example. The emergence of faith completely disrupted the intrinsic order of strengths and weaknesses of deities, and such authority to dictate life and death is precisely what he has always sought. Of course, it would be even better if this world had no spirit realm, no land of no light, no land of eternal night, no gods daring to defy him. So Zeus has come here today for this very goal he has always pursued. The Abyss, the most fearsome yet harmless primordial god of this era. Since its birth, it has quietly existed, never causing the slightest trouble to any of the past divine kings. Rather, it has been their shared prison. Even originally, the trajectory of Tartarus was mostly deemed as the father god of Typhon, but the current divine king really can't find a reason that it poses a threat to himself. Especially after recently receiving a message sent by his avatar from within, which greatly delighted the divine king. An unexpected experience, gaining a divine artifact and origin. Although the avatar used a part of the origin, still a lot was left. Moreover, the primary purpose of this visit was very well completed by the avatar. It successfully found the existence corresponding to Zeus's prophetic senses, an entity capable of mobilizing the power of the Abyss, the mother of demons revered by billions, deemed a great entity. If the former is icing on the cake, then the latter, even if not help in the nick of time, is a massive force capable of influencing global dynamics. Especially since the message informed Zeus that this mother of demons could potentially be his natural ally, the sixth wife in a sense. This left Zeus regretting that he hadn't taken action sooner, yet he couldn't help but exclaim that it still wasn't too late. He never imagined that even today, he could still gain support in this way. Perhaps this is the divine destiny that the divine king possesses. This is the duty I was born to fulfill. As for the benefits it brings, they are merely a modest reward given by destiny to its executor. With a chuckle, the divine king's mood at this moment was very good. However, he did not completely relax but kept his spirit constantly taut. According to the description provided by the previous information, it wouldn't be long before his incarnation would meet the mother of demons in person, and she would open a live broadcast of a spiritual domain for him, which is specifically why Zeus came to Asgard. After all, an incarnation is still an incarnation. It underestimated the isolating capabilities of Tartarus, resulting in the delay of the previous transmission that Zeus received. Compared to the mortal realm, it is less likely here to conflict with the laws of the Abyss. Hence, Zeus waits silently, expectant yet unhurried. Time slowly passes. It's unknown how much time has gone by. At a certain moment, in the palace at the central mountain of Asgard, a hint of joy flickers in the eyes of the divine king. From the void beyond this realm, a will interface similar to the previous one but clearer is approaching his location. With a thought, an immense will immediately unfolds and merges with the pursuing thought. In an instant, the sensory perceptions of the incarnation's spiritual domain and Zeus's actual body synchronized. However, perhaps due to the differences in spacetime between the two realms, there is still a slight delay, and the first thing that enters the divine king's mind is not the incarnation's observations, but a letter that followed. With a slightly raised eyebrow, Zeus calmly opens this letter that exists only in his consciousness. Although he could comprehend it with a single thought, it is precisely in facing such a significant matter that the divine king needs to remain calm and composed. A very special appearance, doesn't seem real. Let me see if there's any interference with her will. If there is, then break the connection. But what kind of special is this? The incarnation didn't say so in my view, this special should be something I can recognize at a glance. I didn't specifically describe this special, probably for fear of interception during the transmission of information. especially since it faces a powerful deity from the abyss directly. So if I can't recognize what's special about the appearance of the Mother of Demons at a glance, that would indeed be a problem. With a calm expression, while dozens of speculations flash through his mind and then dismiss them one by one, Zeus slightly shakes his head, feeling there's no need to rush. No matter how special it may be, just tackle it as it comes. Moreover, if it's truly unusual, that in itself proves that what his incarnation saw was real. So, he casually takes a cup of wine brewed by Dionysus and savors it finely. He refocuses on the signal from the abyss, waiting for the delay to end. A moment, 2 moments, 3 moments. He didn't wait too long. Only half a glass of wine had been drunk when the originally empty mind started to change. The unclear becomes gradually clearer, and the first thing that catches his eye is a pair of eyes brimming with intense emotions and affection. And just from one look, Zeus, the master of emotions, discerns a myriad of thoughts in them. The owner of these eyes must admire him immensely. It's just that she dares not express it. She is both inferior and proud, just like those princesses from the small nations of the mortal realm when they discover his divine identity. What special feature! It turns out to be just this. Subconsciously feeling he understood the incarnation's thoughts, his originally taut spirit slightly relaxed. Chapter 1030. Admiration and the Shock of Failure. The abyss within an unnamed realm. A sea of flowers rose up, vines and plants woven into shape. Having received affirmative response from his true form, the divine king incarnation let go of his last sliver of doubt. Gazing at the figure before him, he had no intention of wasting this rare opportunity that came once in a millennium. And so, in a mere thought, a palace composed of flora erupted from the ground, shrouding the forms of Zeus and Moya. In an instant, it seemed as if fate itself trembled faintly in the dark, celebrating the rectification of a path once astray. The laws of the present world and the abyss began to converge in an unknowable place, awaiting the further actions of the divine king. As if blessed by fortuitous wisdom, both the avatar and the true self of Zeus experienced a moment of enlightenment. He was destined to sire 9 goddesses with the being before him, but destiny took an unexpected turn before he ascended to the throne. Thus, the preordained deities were altered, in both number and identity. As for the present world, it's hard to say whether this change was good or bad. Regardless, the divine king had afforded the birth of deities, once impossible, a chance to descend into the world once again. For Zeus, this was an undeniable opportunity. After all, this was not the same as the request from that demon prince. This time, he had no need to worry about inciting the wrath of the present world, and his own bloodline still remained intact. With a wave of a large hand, the palace gates, built of plant life, came together and closed. Shortly after, as the earth trembled ever so slightly, an invisible ripple gradually emanated out from this spot. At first it was just this single realm, then it reached nearby parts of the abyss, eventually encompassing the entire Tartarus, and even the places within the present world. In the depths of the starry sky, Aphrodite, who waited quietly before the gate of sacrifice, felt her spirit jolt. As this wave of energy approached where she was, the goddess of beauty only felt an incredibly vast will descending upon her. The favor of the abyss will bestowed upon her, accompanied by a sudden increase by an indeterminable multiple in the power of her race. What had been, not long after its creation by her, no more than a few demons, seemingly expanded in an instant by countless multiples, becoming a formidable demon clan that spread throughout Tartarus, even receiving a portion of the abyss will's preference. At this moment, Aphrodite had no doubt that even without the mother of demons' promised rewards, the sheer endowment of the abyss's favor alone could easily elevate her to a formidable demon god of great significance in the abyss. Of course, she would not leave the human world unless absolutely necessary. Thus, despite being profoundly shocked by this sudden change, Aphrodite was merely surprised for a moment, then acted as if she heard nothing of it. The invisible ripple, the abyss within an unnamed realm. A sea of flowers rose up, vines and plants woven into shape. Having received an affirmative response from his true form, the divine king incarnation let go of his last sliver of doubt. Gazing at the figure before him, he had no intention of wasting this rare opportunity that came once in a millennium. And so, in a mere thought, a palace composed of flora erupted from the ground, shrouding the forms of Zeus and Moya. In an instant, it seemed as if fate itself trembled faintly in the dark, celebrating the rectification of a path once astray. The laws of the present world and the abyss began to converge in an unknowable place, awaiting the further actions of the divine king. As if blessed by fortuitous wisdom, both the avatar and the true self of Zeus experienced a moment of enlightenment. He was destined to sire 9 goddesses with the being before him, but destiny took an unexpected turn before he ascended to the throne. Thus, the preordained deities were altered, in both number and identity. As for the present world, it's hard to say whether this change was good or bad. Regardless, the divine king had afforded the birth of deities, once impossible, a chance to descend into the world once again. For Zeus, this was an undeniable opportunity. After all, this was not the same as the request from that demon prince. This time, he had no need to worry about inciting the wrath of the present world, and his own bloodline still remained intact. Shah! With a wave of a large hand, the palace gates, built of plant life, came together and closed. Shortly after, as the earth trembled ever so slightly, an invisible ripple gradually emanated out from this spot. At first it was just this single realm, then it reached nearby parts of the abyss, eventually encompassing the entire Tartarus, and even the places within the present world. In the depths of the starry sky, Aphrodite, who waited quietly before the gate of sacrifice, felt her spirit jolt. As this wave of energy approached where she was, the goddess of beauty only felt an incredibly vast will descending upon her. The favor of the abyss will bestowed upon her, accompanied by a sudden increase by an indeterminable multiple in the power of her race. What had been, not long after its creation by her, no more than a few demons, seemingly expanded in an instant by countless multiples, becoming a formidable demon clan that spread throughout Tartarus, even receiving a portion of the abyss will's preference. At this moment, Aphrodite had no doubt that even without the mother of demons' promised rewards, the sheer endowment of the abyss's favor alone could easily elevate her to a formidable demon god of great significance in the abyss. Of course, she would not leave the human world unless absolutely necessary. Thus, despite being profoundly shocked by this sudden change, Aphrodite was merely surprised for a moment, then acted as if she heard nothing of it.